Three in Midfield podcast, episode 237. Bargain bucket beating. We are joined by Liverpool fan Steve and Arsenal fan Basil. Let's get the show started. Yes, I am indeed your host, Kojo, of the 3inMidfield podcast. And today's going to be an interesting one because, everyone that's ever been on this show has had a humbling experience. But today, I'm in a very, very awkward position because not only am I hosting, I'm also going to get roasted. So without further ado, let's introduce the guests. Now, these are regulars. They are honorary members of 3inMidfield. So we're going to go first with Liverpool fan, Steve, my brother. How you doing, bro?
I'm great, mate. Might not surprise you to know, mate. Everything is great in the world for me right now. Listen, I've got dine out material for the rest of my life to be able to, when we get into this, to be able to be the football club that has dished out your biggest beating, your joint biggest beating in history, is beyond my wildest dreams, mate. Couldn't comprehend it when it was, coming towards the end of the game yesterday. I'm beyond laughing sillily at things on the television like a little kid, but it was getting to that stage, mate. It's like every time we went forward, it was like we could score. I'm just, mate, I love you to bits, man. So I'm genuinely gonna do this with a tinge of regret. This, whatever roasting you get, mate, comes from me. It comes in from the right place, mate. Okay, just important you understand that.
You know what? This day was coming, man. So I'm gonna call on. This day was coming, and of course, he's back. He's very, very much Arteta in after being Arteta in for all of Arteta's time there. Basil, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing all right. I feel like we've had like great moments in football, and I remember there's these two great managers who came out to the press conference and did great speeches. You know, Rafa Benitez when Liverpool were doing their title charge, and Jose Mourinho during his time at Manchester United. And I feel this is just a perfect moment to give such a similar speech. So I've got my fact books ready.
Yeah.
And, there's just a lot of great information I just need to give out to the press. Did you know, Kojo, there are 7 continents in the world?
Wow, man. Here we go.
In Snow White, the number of dwarves are 7.
Right.
There are 7 books in the Harry Potter series.
Wow.
Manchester United's most popular footballers wore the number 7. There's 7 days in a week. Most people know that.
Yeah.
Yesterday, there was 7 goals scored in the match between Manchester United and Liverpool. And in the words of Jose Mourinho, this is what we call football heritage.
Steve, remind me to never invite this guy back on this podcast.
No. Why would you not do that? That was very insightful, Basil. Thank you very much. I genuinely appreciate your efforts. It's not lost on me. Top man, well done.
Right. Before we get started on the show, we've got some comments here. People are very, very quick to attack me. Shout out to Deluded, who actually called me yesterday. I thought he was just going to come and banter me. He called me whilst he was live on stream. It took me about 2 seconds to realize what was happening. I was like, hold on, no. We ain't gonna let this happen. I'm just gonna get cooked. But anyway, why the Man United hold 7? Man said, fam, forget the talking. We want to hear about United. Kojo, how are you, fella? Thank you for asking. I'm doing all right. A lot better than I thought I would be. Yesterday, if you asked me yesterday, this would have been a very different podcast. I don't think anyone would have been here with me. This would have been a lot of swearing, probably plus just probably the end of my podcast experience ever. But here we go. Ali, fellow United fan of mine, the abuse I've faced today has been painful. You're going to have to hold that for like at least 2, 3, 4, or jokes on 7 years. Assad asked me the question that Basil has already answered for me. How many days there are in a week? So, 7, but, one of them is God's day. I mean, I got smacked on God's day. United. and of course, this is a brother of mine, Ephraim, who has the same birthday as me. Just saying lol with laughing faces. By the way, I've got a lot of Instagram messages that I've ignored. I'm doing this on purpose, just by design. So if you're listening, shame on you. I'm not responding to your message. But let's get on with the show. And you know what, Basil? Actually, this was the plan. We're gonna start with you first because your team did win 3-2 at home to Bournemouth. very crazy game of football. I think
Yeah.
it didn't go as expected as most people thought. I'm talking about, fans in general, FPL people, because a lot of people put a lot of Arsenal players in their team straight away. And it looked like you guys were about to go through a sink situation, but you managed to find your way back into the game. Firstly, how do you feel? I mean,
I feel great. I was out with my cousin, and we were at a restaurant, and also keeping tabs. And it's funny because we were sitting down, and there was these two ladies sitting opposite us, and obviously the lady was also giving commentary. It looks like we were both keeping up to tabs with like the Arsenal score. So when they went 1-0, my cousin, don't worry, like we'll come back. When it went 2-0, I thought game done. I did not see us coming back. Right. Then we got the early goal. Quite quickly, and then 2-2. So I thought, yeah, we have a chance. So I was keeping up with like the commentary, like the online commentary of the game. When I saw 95, 96, I said game. I didn't even know how many minutes they gave us. Game done.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden, a notification popped up on my phone. The way I screamed in that restaurant, honestly, they're going to ban me next time from going there. The way I was screaming in that restaurant. But honestly, you know what? I'm going to come here. And for me, it's like a lot of people go on and say their opinions and they're quite prideful and sometimes don't admit where they're wrong. I can come here and actually apologize to Arteta. I was never Arteta-in. I'm not a person who goes and say, I believed in him. I actually didn't believe in his project whatsoever. I wanted him out. I've always wanted him out. But true kudos to him and credit where credit's due. Regardless of whether we win the league or not, he's done a fantastic job this season and he seems to have galvanized that club. So I can come here and openly say, I apologize to him and he's proved me wrong. But at the moment, like the confidence is high. As long as we keep like players fit, I think we have a good chance of winning the league because I've seen the fixtures between the two teams, between Arsenal and City.
Yeah,
Arsenal do have a few tricky fixtures, but I think the most difficult period is one between Liverpool, City, and Chelsea, which is all like back to back. But City do still have a few banana skins there because even yesterday, their victory wasn't that convincing because Newcastle didn't take their chances in key moments of the game. So I think Arsenal have a great chance of winning the league. And I don't think we'll get a better chance this season because you actually can't legislate for how other teams will actually improve next season. For instance, Liverpool went all 4 competitions last season and people are talking about the quadruple. But in this season, it seems to be not a great season for them. The same can happen with Arsenal. We can have this great season this season. And next season, it could be disaster for us. Even Chelsea won the Champions League, 2 seasons ago? And look at where they're at now. So you have to take your opportunities when they arise. And I don't think Arsenal will get a better opportunity than this season.
That's fair. I mean, Steve, you know how it is to compete with City in the title race. Obviously, I know they signed Haaland. Haaland started the season on fire. He's got a lot of Premier League goals already. We're still in March. He has time to break records galore. But looking at how Arsenal are playing, are you seeing a resilience that is necessary to win the title? Or on the other side of the coin, they have conceded 2 goals in their last 2 games against teams that maybe you in the title race you expect them to be a bit more dominant over. Which side do you think they're more erring on?
Well, they're definitely feeling the pressure, and that's understandable. City and Liverpool have done this over a number of seasons. City have come out on top more often than not. So with regards to them, they've got the know-how. This is the thing. It's all about know-how. If Arsenal manage to get themselves over the line this season, then they're in a strong position to grow as a club. Conversely, you can do what Tottenham did in the Champions League final with Liverpool, which is go away and kind of feel a bit sorry for yourself and not really use it as a platform to build on, to use as an infrastructure to improve your football club. How many times can you go to the well and come up with the goods in the 97th minute? This is a position Arsenal need to stop putting themselves in, and it's not the first time. Reiss Nelson, I recall, doing bits and pieces away at Forest, 2 goals and an assist to get him out of trouble. This was way back in the season, but he still bailed him out. It's just going to go right to the wire, and it's interesting that Basil mentions the games against Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal that are coming up. For Liverpool, we played Manchester City, Chelsea, and Arsenal within 8 days. Yeah. That in the first week in April has the capacity to catapult us to where we need to be, or completely derail our season. If Liverpool get a result against Arsenal, Manchester City carry on doing what Manchester City do, and they're not infallible. They've been dropping points as well. then there's a possibility that Manchester City have the wherewithal and the know-how to get over the line. It's really, really hard to reach the finishing line, as we found out in any tournament, really. But I can remember telling you, Basil, to chill out with Arteta.
I remember that.
You need to give the guy time. It takes time. It's fine. You wanted the best for your football club. I don't think there's anyone out there who can do a better job for you at the moment because you've allowed him to build. You've allowed him to put his footprint on the football club. Is it enough to get you over the line? Back to the original question. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that there isn't a bump in the road somewhere for Arsenal. As I say, you can't keep going to the well at 2-0 down. If that second goal comes 10 minutes later, you are in all kinds of trouble. It was euphoria. Once you score the first goal, people were lumping on with the bookies saying Arsenal will catch and beat Bournemouth because winning is a habit, as is losing. So if Bournemouth are in a different place and they're turning up, they manage the game better than they did against Arsenal. The crowd at Arsenal really, really got behind the team. Really, really important to do that between now and the end of the season. I think there's a bump in the road for Arsenal. I don't know how big that bump in the road is. Hopefully it's Liverpool because we have our own agenda and our own quest. Does that bump in the road derail you completely? I'm not sure. I think you've got a good team spirit there. You've got in Jesus and Zinchenko guys that have won that are in your squad, although Jesus isn't playing. They still have that winning mentality. You can't not have that, having spent that amount of time at Manchester City. At the end of the season, if Arsenal have done enough to get over the line, then league tables don't lie. They thoroughly deserve it. And this probably is the season when you have the best chance to do it because there's no way Liverpool will be like Liverpool were this season. I don't see Chelsea improving enough to challenge for the title. Manchester United will spend and will likely improve again. We'll get on to that, I'm sure, in Kojo's section. So I think the usual suspects will re-emerge, and when I say usual suspects, in particular Liverpool, this is probably the best chance you're going to get in terms of where you are right now. And you're doing quite a good job at front running, but I just don't know if you can hold it.
Yeah, the biggest issue is that Arsenal are really just playing on like confidence right now because we don't have the squad depth, and you only have to look at our substitution every week. It's so predictable. The fact we're always making a right back substitution tells you that much about Arsenal's depth. We're chasing a game, and we always either Ben White is starting, bring him off for Tomiyasu, or if Tomiyasu is starting, bring him off for Ben White. The fact we're having to change our right back whenever we're chasing games tells you about the squad depth. Obviously, Eddie wasn't there, and if he's our only striker there, but it's like, well, if we're chasing a game, we have no options, or if vice versa, if Eddie started, he never comes off, no matter how bad of a game he's having, because we have no one to replace him with. And, we even signed Jorginho. He didn't even come on yesterday because obviously he wasn't the type of player we needed for that type of game. But it tells you that at the moment, Arsenal are really playing on confidence, team spirit, and that's what's driving them so far. Because that squad depth is not there. I mean, it's scary how City can just rotate or bring on certain players to change a game. Bernardo Silva came on, you bring on that level of quality, and he gets to go shortly after coming on. There's certain games where Arsenal can't, if the going gets tough and we're back in that position again, we're not always going to be bailed out by players coming off the bench because we just don't have the squad depth, unfortunately. And that potentially could be Arsenal's undoing. I still don't. I'm hopeful we can win the league. I still don't fully trust Arsenal considering what we did last season. That for me still is in the back of my mind. We had like 4 games left to go. It was more or less in our hands, and we capitulated. So it's like even if Arsenal are in the same position this season, until we get to game 37 or 38, I still don't trust. I only trust Arsenal at least like 65% of the way. There's that 35% of me that saying, hold on, because we've seen this before with Arsenal.
I mean, I take you guys' points on board, and if I'm gonna defend, I mean, maybe defend Arteta just a little bit. Is I know you're not really blaming him for anything. What I'm gonna say is, I think the team spirit and the confidence is obviously a good thing to praise at the end of the day. I mean, you're talking about someone like Reiss Nelson who doesn't get much game time, for whatever the reason will be, whether he's just unfit or he's just not making the match squad or whatever for whatever reason. the man management of some of these players is fantastic. The confidence to bring on Smith Rowe, which I think was an injury in the first half, but then take him off in the second half because he's just not working with the team, trying to make things happen. Reiss Nelson came on, there was an immediate difference. Things are happening, they're getting goals. I think it's fair. Before I get back, we go to Arsenal, and actually before we get back to Bournemouth, actually, EDA 1993 says 7-0. We're getting there. Take your time. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's actually the next game, so breathe, have a cuppa, and then come back. But yeah, no. I think watching that game for me, I can only praise the resilience at this point. And the thing about the Premier League is Bournemouth also have something to play for as well. So you have these games where teams will come to your stadium and they'll give it their all and they'll get goals. And more than anything, they were just clinical on the night. But Arsenal found a way to get back into the game. On Bournemouth quickly, they had about 3 or 4 warning shots about the goals that before the goals were conceded. In particular, Partey's goal and obviously the winner for Reiss Nelson, where in a particular area of the box where Reiss Nelson was by himself, they kept on leaving the player unmarked in those positions. Steve, so on Bournemouth, obviously a tough result for them to take, but do you see them showing any signs of having any capability of staying up in this league?
No, I said before when I'm speaking that winning becomes a habit, as does losing. I don't know if they invested enough in their squad in the summer, and then they had the manager change, and they went with Gary O'Neill, who's done a great job. But what are the players thinking? He's manager to the end of the season. Do they feel the need to prove anything to him because there's a possibility he's not in charge next year? Are they happy to go down and have another go at it with the parachute payments and all that stuff? There are certain clubs which tend to bounce up and down. Norwich being another one. Fulham is another one. They kind of can't hold their ground. Fulham this season will probably, well, they're pretty much safe already, to be fair.
Yeah.
But typically they haven't been. I don't see enough from Bournemouth, and I certainly don't want to see anything from Bournemouth this weekend because we play them. To suggest that they've got enough about them to stay up. No quality. They lack quality. Okay, they scored 2 goals against Arsenal. The first one, which if you're Arteta will drive you mad, is a kick-off routine, which is something that's preordained. It's been planned in training. You come here and you fall for it. That's scandalous. Of all the goals Arsenal concede this season, that will be the one that riles him the most because it's avoidable and it's really to turn up for a game and not be switched on that early. 9 seconds or something?
Yeah,
to be a goal down that quickly. That's probably the worst start. Well, it is the worst start you can ask for. I don't see Bournemouth staying in the Premier League. I think there aren't 3 teams worse than them. I just don't see them staying up. They're just not good enough for me. They're that quality, and that stems from a lack of investment. They tried it before. They bought Jordan Ive, they bought Dominic Solanke from Liverpool for absolutely stupid money, and it's good to see that they've learnt those lessons. But you have to go and buy tried and tested Premier League players if you want to stay in the Premier League. You have to have players. Mitrovic is an interesting dynamic at Fulham. Has something to prove in the Premier League after scoring a shed load of goals in the Championship. Really good to have him in your team. Comes back to the Premier League having had a minimal return the last time he was here. And he had something to prove, and they benefited from that. So no, I don't see Bournemouth staying up. I think Bournemouth are destined for life in the Championship.
Fair enough, Basil.
I don't know. Usually in past seasons, there's maybe 1 or 2 teams you can say definitely going now. I think with the inconsistency of some of the other teams, I generally can't even call it because West Ham are so bad. Everton are so bad. Nottingham Forest seems to be picking up points now. So even I think Nottingham Forest can survive. I think they bought a lot of players. The manager seems to have found a settled squad and they seem to be gelling together now at the right time of the season. Who else is down there with them? Leeds, once again, inconsistent. I generally can't call it. I think Bournemouth have a chance only because the other teams around them are so bad that if they do survive, it's literally by the skin of their teeth. Usually, you have 1 or 2 teams who are just languishing and you say, oh, yeah, they're definitely going down. And Bournemouth would be one of those teams, but because of what the others above them are doing, I generally can't call it. And the funny thing about Bournemouth is they can't defend, but they still kind of pose a threat going forward. They're just not clinical whatsoever. but they still pose some threats going forward when you watch them in certain games, which makes me think they have a slight chance. I mean, if I was a betting man, it'll definitely be my bottom three of going down. But yeah, I can't call it, honestly. I think this will probably go like last day and there'll be a lot of twists and turns.
Well, we'll get to the other teams later in the show, but between 12th and 20th is only 6 points the gap. So it's going to be a very interesting relegation battle. To a team that conceded like they are in a relegation battle. Here we go. Ding, 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 ding. Liverpool Football Club 7, Manchester United Football Club 0. I'm not going to say nil.
Coach, before you go, I've never laughed so much in a football match in the longest time. Honestly, I've never laughed so much. That match was comedic.
It was comedic, and it got to the point where I was watching it with my boys, Spencer and David. Marie, my partner, came along as well. And one of their boys as well. And when they got to 5, I went in one of my group chats. I said, guys, 6 is coming, right? And then literally a minute later, 6 hit. And then I said to them, the crowd are chanting, we want 7. I think they're in the mood to give them one more. And they gave them one more. And deservedly so. By the way, by the guy that's leaving, Bobby Firmino, who decided to just tuck in a nice one for himself as well. He got a goal and assist coming off the bench. He was on the pitch for 10 minutes? Great. Anyway, let's start with the winners first, because I don't think we need to start with the losers just yet. Trust me, we're going to get to them. There's a lot more to say about them, I think. But Steve, of course, jubilant as ever. It's been an up and down season for you guys, but if you're smacking your rivals 7-0, there's nothing that can bring you down.
No. In recent weeks, first 35, 40 minutes against Real Madrid, Alisson's mistake for the equaliser aside, we played very well. Well enough to play that way against somebody else will win you most of your games of football, irrespective of who you play, because Real Madrid are Real Madrid. And they've got this special thing with the Champions League we like to think we have, but they're at a different level with regards to that. An interesting game. First half, we started really well. United found it difficult to deal with the speed we were moving the ball, which has improved massively in recent weeks. And we never really created anything. And then, as always happens with football matches, you got a foothold in the game. And look, if Fernandes scores his header from extreme left of the goal, then you have to doff your hat to him and say, great header, great finish. He's no right to hit the target from there. So I'm not too worried about that one. The direct ball into Rashford's feet, he took it first time and got nothing on it in terms of purchase, pace and power or direction, was a little bit more of a concern. But we managed to see that threat out, and then obviously the goal itself, the first goal, comes from quality from Andy Robertson, who judged his pass really well by driving inside, being very inverted. He asked questions of Fred. Fred didn't answer, and then it opens up for the ball inside of Dalot for Gakpo to come step inside and finish in the bottom corner. I wouldn't say it wasn't a deserved lead at half-time. I think if we'd gone in at 0-0, I wouldn't have had a problem with that either. I think Manchester United did ride the pressure to start with. That would have been pleasing. To concede when they did would have been disappointing. You go in at half-time, Manchester United get the message from the manager, carry on doing what you've been doing towards the end of the second half. You are getting opportunities, they'll come. And then within 3 or 4 minutes, it's 3-0. And it's really difficult to take that as a coach, as a fan, sometimes as a player. Look, we'd need probably 2 hours to go through all the goals. So because there were 7 of them, in case you didn't notice. From a Liverpool perspective, I said to you before we went on air, from a Liverpool perspective, what do we learn? The first half against Real Madrid and the second half against Manchester United are classic Liverpool performances in terms of intensity, in terms of moving the ball really quickly. The press was really, really good in the second half against United, and I mean really good. Yep. The best it's been all season. We can do it. We need to remind ourselves we can do it, and we need to do it week in, week out, irrespective of who we're playing against. And it starts at the weekend away at Bournemouth. Now, if we play as well as we did in the second half against Manchester United, the Bournemouth games are guaranteed 3 points. They will not be able to keep us out. We were just too good in transition, too good in movement, too good in press. We were really, really clinical. Mo Salah looked absolutely back to. We can go back as far as pre-AFCON when he was everybody's man on your lips for a real good tilt at the Ballon d'Or, and then came back from the AFCON and forgot to get going again. And we really haven't seen a performance like that from Mo for a good 12 months or so. Looked really, really sharp. Seems to relish and enjoy playing Man United, which is a good thing because he's a man for the big occasion, clearly. If we can recover this, keep doing this form, then our season will end well for us in regard that we will probably finish in the top four, which changes the dynamics of the conversations we have around the transfer table in the summer. Yeah. But because of the European coefficient, we literally could finish 15th the following season and still qualify for the Champions League because of the coefficient ranking system. It doesn't matter where Liverpool finish next season, they will qualify for the Champions League the year after, because I think we're third in the rankings table in the whole Europe. So that's wrong. I don't agree with that, but it is what it is. And it will form a major part of the conversation when you sit down and talk to the likes of Jude Bellingham and Guardiola, defender, when we look to strengthen our squad. That will be a caveat we use. So from a Liverpool perspective, really, really strong second half performance. Gakpo looks absolutely superb. It's kind of softened the blow of losing Firmino, which is absolutely galling because this guy's a personality. He's been pivotal to everything Klopp has tried to do. He's been his press, his football intelligence, his selflessness, and the guy just as a person has been really, really good to have around the club. But we have to face up to the fact that 8 years is a long time at a football club. It really is. And he's probably ready for another challenge, maybe one that's not so physically demanding, because in the last 2 years he struggled with injuries, not been available when we've needed him. But he's a legend of the football club, absolutely. He's played in 3 European Cup finals. He's been over 90 points 3 times. He's won the FA Cup. He's won the League Cup. Blah, 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 and blah. He's got the full locker full of medals. This guy will be singing Si Senor at Anfield for many, many years to come, and rightly so. Absolutely superb player. Darwin Núñez, the second header technically is absolutely ridiculous. There's no pace on that ball. Henderson chops in there, and he generates so much power, and he uses the side of his head. He's an aerial threat. Absolutely, he's an aerial threat. And then Mo Salah becomes Liverpool's leading Premier League goal scorer of all time. He's in the pantheon of Liverpool greats. He's in the pantheon of Premier League greats. He should be in everybody's conversation in the Premier League team of all time. You'd have a very difficult case to not include him, even if you include him as an orthodox right winger. His numbers are insane for what was considered to be a one-season wonder. 129 goals in 205, I think, in his games is a ridiculous return. Not to mention the assists and the games when he stood up to be counted. Just an absolutely superb footballer that is now in the top 5 or 6 Liverpool players of all time. And that's high praise indeed, because like United, we've a rich history, a lot of football heritage, lots of legends of yesteryear that hold those positions at the moment. And he's quite rightly spoken about in the same sort of circles as those guys. So from a Liverpool point of view, what do we learn? We can do it. We're not finished by any stretch of the imagination. Self-belief is huge. That's 5 games in a row, 5 clean sheets, 13 points from 15. That's title winning form. However you look at it, that type of form, if we do that for the next 10 games, we will be in 4th place. Simple as that.
Fact. And wow, that's my voice already. Haven't even started yet. And Basil, go on.
Liverpool are the most annoying team in the league, because whenever they seem like down in the dumps and dead, they seem to just find something to just creep up. It was like that 2 seasons ago where I couldn't see them finishing 4th, and they still managed to finish 4th, and then build on that in the following season. And when I was looking at where Liverpool and Chelsea were in the league, I said absolutely no chance. Liverpool have no chance of getting top 4. Now I think they will usurp Spurs and finish in 4th place. And once again, I know I used the word team spirit with Arsenal. That's one thing that drives Liverpool, because Liverpool have the quality in terms of ability with the players. It's just that they just haven't consistently turned it on this season. But one thing that will never die from them is kind of that team spirit and that ethos of working together. And sometimes, even when things aren't going well, or maybe their rhythm just isn't there, that seems to be the thing that kind of drives them forward. And so, watching that game, honestly, it was honestly watching that game. Honestly, I mean, they didn't start the best in the game. I think it was a bit tentative between the two teams. But as soon as Liverpool got that first goal, they just seemed reinvigorized in the second half, and it was just, it was just a wonderful Liverpool team to see. But I think Liverpool will probably finish in the top 4. They'll probably finish ahead of Newcastle. Newcastle are definitely on a big slump, and I think they'll finish ahead of Spurs, because I just think, all jokes aside, Spurs are just a bad team. All jokes aside, they're just a very, very bad team.
Yeah, it's been a disastrous week for Spurs. United. I guess I'll try and take this one. You guys can ask me as many questions as you want as well. We'll go all back and forth. That's how we do over here. It's not about losing to Liverpool. It is about losing to Liverpool, but I mean in the sense of like you can lose games to Liverpool. It's not the first time we lost to Liverpool. Back in our best times with Sats Ferguson, we were 1-0 down at Anfield, applying the pressure, and then David Ngo ran the length of the pitch with the ball and tucked Man United away and put them to bed, won the game 2-0. So going to Liverpool and losing is not a shame. However, losing 7-0 for any team is a disgrace. Losing 7-0 to your greatest rivals is an abomination. That just can't happen. It just on any level. I don't care if Man United were at the level of Portsmouth. You don't go to Anfield and lose 7-0. It's just as far as I'm concerned, once your top rivals, it's just not allowed. And what we saw yesterday was probably one of the worst things I've seen in football ever, as a fan for myself. The first half, United looked okay. Again, as Steve said, I think we ride the wave a little bit. We didn't have too much of the ball. It was more just counter-attacking, looking for the breaks. A lot of the chances that we had were sort of out of nowhere. Dalot, that whipping that ball, it was a good cross. Fernandes maybe should have scored, but it was a good header, good attempt. Rashford, I think, should have done better with his chance as well. He tried to take it first time. Me being the cynic, I think take a first touch and then smack it at the same time. It's also good to make sure that the keeper isn't ready, take a shot and just, do what you want to do. But you go 1-0 down at halftime. And the funny thing about the goal that Liverpool scored, the first one, is that the signs were there also with that one. Very similar to what I was saying about Bournemouth, because that left side that Liverpool were attacking, United's right, there was a lot of space there for Andrew Robertson to cause havoc. There was a lot of space for Gakpo and Nunez to just go on that side and just bombard. And the one person that did not help this situation whatsoever was another £80 million signing. And I'm starting to hate that number. I hate 80 more than the number 7 right now, okay? Anthony was an absolute horror show in terms of working for the team. Steve said something to me a couple of weeks ago that's always resonated in my mind about if one person is not functioning with the team, the whole system comes apart. And it was reference to Naby Keita in a Champions League game away from home. I think it was last season where he just sort of capitulated.
Yeah, season before, quarter-final, Real Madrid in their reserve team stadium. I know the one you mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. And you could see that he was not helping Dalot. And I will criticize Dalot, but there's only so much you can do when you're not getting help from your partner on the right side of the pitch. He didn't defend. He didn't track runs. He didn't follow anybody. Robertson had the best day of his life. Robertson didn't have to work hard. He didn't have to work hard.
So what's your actual thoughts on Anthony and where you think Anthony can go with
I
have my
thoughts on Anthony is this. Look, I always have time for players who get adapted to a league. Steve will tell you as well, I was the first person, despite them joining Liverpool, to defend Darwin Nunez and Gakpo. Firstly, because I wanted them at Man United. But number 2, because you got to give some players time. And if it doesn't work out, say no more. Right? So I'm always here to give players time. However, there's struggling to show your best ability in the league, and there's just not working hard enough. And he just didn't work hard enough. That's as simple as it gets. And when you're talking about level of performance now, is gone from promising to worrying. He's not showing any signs of getting better, which is concerning. I think Ten Hag's trying to play a system that suits him a lot more than others in the team, trying to get the best out of him, and he's not doing it well. And yesterday was the icing on the cake for him, because it was one of the worst performances. I'm not talking about being on the ball. Off the ball is just as important as on the ball. And when your team is told to remain compact defensively, that plays also a part with you, helping your fullback and helping the rest of your midfield. He did nothing. He did nothing correct in this game. Absolutely nothing. He left Dalot to suffer. And I will criticize Dalot because Dalot didn't defend well either. Absolutely not. I mean, he's not really a good defender in general anyway. Yeah. But at least back your fullback. And I think Wan-Bissaka would have suffered the same fate as well. Yes, he's a good recovery defender. But if you're not getting help from your fullback or your right winger, you're being left to sink. It was poor.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw Robinson just bombing forward without no thought as to what was behind him, because Anthony didn't track back. And obviously there was one where Anthony lost the ball, and then he put his hands up and just didn't jog back. And I thought that's a disgrace. The thing is this: when you compare like the three players, Anthony, Nunes, and Gakpo, the difference is that with Nunes, you can Nunes so young, you can see like the fundamentals of like making the runs in behind and he's a work on and off the ball, and say, okay, if he gets like the finishing correct just in the training ground, you can see what can happen if he works on that in the training ground. Same with Gakpo, you can see he's good technically, just needs to kind of settle. the issue, coach, I have with Anthony, his fundamentals just aren't good whatsoever. His dribbling isn't great in terms of taking on players. Like, how many times do you see him beat a player one-on-one? Rarely see it, not good. Secondly, he's so predictable. When he gets the ball, he always shifts it immediately onto his left-hand side, which makes it very predictable. His crossing and his passing is very, very poor. And obviously, he scored about 3-4 goals so far. But when you look at the majority of his shots, it's very tame. It doesn't really work for keeper when you actually take it as a whole. And I think his fundamentals aren't good. And I can't see him thriving at United. I think Ten Hag will try and make it work because he's worked with him at Ajax and because of the money spent. But I think he's one of those players where in a season's time, you may just have to cut your losses and say, we just need to shift him and replace him, because I don't think he's a good player at all.
I mean,
honestly, if you watch, I watch him, he doesn't have the fundamentals that you need for a good winger. Because and the worst part for me is the fact that he always shifts it so quickly. Like, you see players who shift it onto their left, but they may do something and then shift it. His immediate movement when he gets the ball is shift onto the left. As a defender or someone facing, I'm like, that's easy because I know what you're going to do. You're always going to pass it in the direction of the left-hand side. Whereas some players are a bit smarter. Like if you take Saka, he does it quite a lot, but at least he stands you up and waits for that moment to do that. Whereas Anthony, within seconds, it's done. And I sit and I was like, I can't see it working personally.
I mean, I'm not totally disagreeing with you. I mean, I'm trying to be honest. I don't even want to defend Anthony too tough. I don't want to defend any of the players, but there's an issue there with Anthony, and it's I don't know if it's a reluctance. It might be a reluctance because I've seen him use his right foot a couple of times, but he just doesn't seem eager to use his right foot to even control the ball and dribble. I mean, there's a point at the Liverpool game, maybe midway through the first half, where he sort of dribbled towards like what's his name, Robertson. He was sort of in between. I think Henderson and Fabinho. There's like a corner, and he was driving forward, and I think he should have gone forward, but he just passed it backwards or sideways rather to Dalot. And we did create a chance from that, but I feel like in that moment he should have had a bit more confidence to go forward. It could be a lack of confidence. Thing is, you cannot perform like that and get away with it. But you know what? It's not only just Anthony. And this is, I don't want to scapegoat only him because it was a whole.
Don't forget your butcher, as they call it.
See, again, and I'll talk about these players as well. That's what I'm saying. So the defense as a whole was poor. Luke Shaw, appalling performance. Lisandro and Varane, poor. And I said Dalot was poor as well. But there's been a bit of revisionism about Lisandro and Varane, and this is where I don't like football fans sometimes, because it's suddenly become a thing of, I had a discussion today where I was told that they haven't been good all season, they've been rubbish. I said, you've been waiting for one game, which is it's a horror show, but we're not going to sit here and lie and say that these two have not improved our defense fundamentally, considering the fact that we've been screaming for two centre backs to replace the guys that are on the bench right now, Maguire and Lindelof, for a long time now. So we're not going to now lie on their names and say Varane is not good enough. He's only good with Sergio Ramos. We're not going to say Martinez not been good all season, because he has been good. He's been part of some horrible defeats for Man United this season. Brighton, Brentford, City, obviously Liverpool, Arsenal, the 3-2 loss. But even that Arsenal game, he played all right, and he scored a goal as well. He did all right. You know, yesterday was bad, very bad, and he met a superb player in Salah, and he's not the first one. He's not been the last that Salah's going to rip into. It's also the thing with like Jerome Boateng. Before he met Messi, there was no questions over him, and then Messi destroyed him, and suddenly it was, I never rated that guy anyway. This is what we're doing, you know. So I know we're not doing that here, but you know, that's what's happened. I don't think a lot of people listening are expecting me to rip into Fred, but I'm going to rip into the fans about Fred. And the issue with Fred is he's been part of this United process. He's been there for about 7 years now. I think 6-7 years. He's been part of this United process where every now and then United have a season where they finish second, or under Mourinho, under Ole, where they've looked all right. They've looked all right. You know, getting 81 points behind City when they got 100 points. 81 points is not a bad total. City got 100 points. They blew everyone out of the water. The next year, United went back to type. Liverpool arose, took City to the limit, and then the next year took the title. Right. But what Fred did yesterday was, I don't know what word to describe. It's like his lack of positioning and understanding where he should be at times is terrifying. And I'll again point out the first goal, because yes, Anthony didn't track back, so Dallo had to go in and sort of.
He ran for no reason, Fred.
He ran towards Gakpo without Gakpo making a run, but also he didn't know where Gakpo was. Yeah. He's opened up a huge space, and it's one of those ones where you just got to say, let me hold my position and at least get a bit more inside. So I'm forcing you to make the pass outside, because the one place you don't want to get closer to is your goal. Make it difficult as possible, because Gakpo absolutely destroyed Varane with his first touch. So I'm a fan of, if you're going to get beaten. Varane was beaten. There was no comeback for him. He was beaten, dead in the water. De Gea's not making that save. Job done. Great finish from Gakpo. Great bit of skill with one touch and a finish. That's clinical. That's brilliant football from him. But Fred was just, it's a reminder of the things he's been doing in the past that's not made me had the confidence in him and all the other players. Casemiro, very poor. I want to ask you guys about this guy now.
Yeah.
So I was going to
go on.
So we need to speak about the double pivot, if you like.
Yeah.
Okay. First half, I totally get why you've dug out Anthony here to talk about a lack of cover, a lack of willingness to do the ugly stuff going back towards your goal. You won't always play against teams that don't ask questions of you, both defensively and in an attack sense, in the way that Liverpool did. In the second half, Harvey Elliott and Mo Salah's link-up play down the right-hand side was the key difference. Yeah. What I don't understand, and this is why we need to talk about your centre midfield, is that nobody stepped across to play in the pocket space when Harvey Elliott became inverted. Harvey Elliott has the most passes of any teenager in the top 5 leagues in Europe right now, because he's a link player. Because we decided, when we set up our team, we leave Bajcetic out, we bring in Harvey Elliott, because we wanted to connect the midfield to the front line, which is really important for Liverpool. It's very bold for Klopp to do that. We thought he'd go with a safe midfielder, Bajcetic, Fabinho and Henderson, which meant we would be able to mark space better than we have been, which is a different skill altogether, which I'm sure you guys are aware of.
Yeah.
The difference between this Liverpool side that hasn't been great and this Manchester United side that is still very much a work in progress is, despite having Casemiro, despite having Varane, despite having David De Gea, despite having Bruno Fernandes, because he's now an experienced player at this level, nobody's able to deal with situations that happen in front of them.
Yep.
No one's able to make tactical changes that don't come off the line. So the best teams in the world can solve problems with the senior players on the pitch. We've got Henderson, we've got Fabinho, we've got Van Dijk, we've got Andy Robertson now is very experienced. Trent Alexander's played 150 games in the Premier League. They understand what's going on in front of them. Mo Salah's an experienced player. they're able to solve problems on the pitch. What you saw from Manchester United and Varane and Casemiro and Martinez were drawn back into Ollie and Ralph Rangnick times where it was just a complete capitulation from a mental perspective. So first of all, tactically, Klopp did a number on your midfield by playing Elliott in the position he played him in. Nobody responded to that. And I'd have to say, including the manager, that would be my worry if I was a Man United fan.
Agreed.
The second thing would be that they were unable to deal with it on the pitch. And the most important thing of all was tactically, Liverpool did a number, but mentally, Manchester United destroyed themselves. You're quite right, Kojo. You cannot go to Liverpool and lose 7-0. At 3-0, a Casemiro, a Varane, a Martinez, anybody has to say, for God's sake, boys, no more, right?
Yeah.
Three's bad. 7 is abhorrent. You can't ever justify 7. Ten Hag learned more about Manchester United in 90 minutes than he's learned in the whole season yesterday. And that would be that when the chips are down, when you need to roll your sleeves up and say, this ain't happening, it's not happening to me, self-pride says I can't do this.
Yep.
And at times I've said the same criticism of Liverpool this year with some of the players who've been filling in. They didn't see that. So the reality is you might be looking at another 5 or 6 players to change your squad with mental strength that allows you to go to places like Anfield, where you know 100% Liverpool are going to be completely at it because it's the biggest game on the calendar for us. We lost 2-1 at Old Trafford, justifiably so, with a very poor performance, with a team that we didn't recognise. We don't become a bad side overnight. You cannot go from that sort of 180 minutes away from football and immortality to a side that isn't capable of turning up for big occasions, and Liverpool did. If I'm a Manchester United fan tonight, I'm worried about the mentality. I think Casemiro is a wonderful addition to the squad, and I'll be grudgingly giving him the respect he deserves because he played for Real Madrid. I don't particularly like them either, for obvious reasons. But he's a footballer. But he should also be a leader. And he should be saying, you mentioned Fred, he should be saying to Fred, what are you doing that for? Do this. And the first thing I'm going to get you to do, Fred, to get your mind back in the game and to get you focused on what you need to do is, I want you to go and stop Harvey Elliott receiving the ball.
Yep.
I'll sort the rest out. You go and play in that pocket of space, that inverted pocket of space, 15 yards in front of the double pivot Liverpool are operating, too close to Mo Salah. The interchanges on down that right-hand side were an outball for Liverpool all afternoon.
Yep.
So people laugh at Salah for making Lopez run in the wrong direction and fall over, and that is funny, right? Because that's how, like you said, that's how players learn. The bigger problem is who in Manchester United was saying, why is there that massive void? Why is there that massive amount of space? All Liverpool are doing.
Quick question. Yeah, quick question, Steve. Who was tracking Gakpo? Because I know Gakpo ran. Who was supposed to be tracking him? Because I can't remember.
It would be Casemiro for the third, because the third goal, he picks the ball up in the centre of the park, holds off a challenge, opens up his body and plays the ball into the channel for Mo Salah to run after.
Yeah,
he's doing that on the halfway line. Your centre midfielders have got to be all over that. You can't allow a Liverpool team that is renowned for its transition to pick the ball up there, hold a guy off, because he's a big lad, 6'4", he's strong, he knows how to hide a ball, he knows how to look after it, he's very smart, and then have enough time to open up his body and measure a ball into the channels. That when you sit and watch a video at Manchester United's training ground today, those are the things that Ten Hag's got to be climbing the walls over. Those are the things you've got to be saying, guys, you can't do this. So from a Manchester, there's still a lot of work for Manchester United to do to get to where you want them to be and where they want to be. And I'm going to say this because I've said it on my own channel where I work. The league this season, for me, isn't great. The Premier League this season, the quality of the football isn't great. And that's not taking anything away from where Arsenal are, because you can only beat what's put in front of you. And they've done it really well, and their points haul is really, really impressive. I think there's been a genuine drop-off in the standard of the Premier League per se this season. And We all said it, Kojo. I said it to you before. If Manchester United ever get themselves a good manager, they have a core. They have 5 or 6 players you can build a team around. We go into tomorrow having had this conversation this evening, and there's still the same questions that haven't been answered by the players at Manchester United. Your captain asked to be substituted. Your
I'm going
captain
to talk about him. Should
have been sent off for manhandling the linesman, and the FA are going to do nothing about that.
Yeah.
So the next time a grassroots referee gets smacked in the mouth by a player, that's on the FA's hands because they haven't dealt with the guy pushing the linesman, and he did push him. I know the people in the chat don't agree, but he did. Terrible challenge on Trent in the corner. He should have been booked for that too.
Yep.
He's a guy that if you're in the changing room, you can't look at him and go, "There's my inspiration." If I'm playing in a team that he's in, he'd piss me off. He wouldn't inspire me. He'd annoy me. Who's your captain? Who's your captain on the pitch? It should be someone like Casemiro or a Varane or a Martinez that lead by example. Not necessarily your best so-called technical player. Doesn't have to be your captain.
Well, this is sorry, Basil. This is where I've agreed so much, and I've been annoyed about this whole captain's armband at United, because I believe in football there are 2 types of captains, right? There are the players that are not the loudest. They don't really tell you too much what to do, but you can see by performances they lead by example. They're consistent. They lead the way. When you need them to arise, they will arise for you. Similar to it's the reason why like a Messi and Ronaldo can get their armbands for their nations, because they're not the biggest talkers in terms of telling players to do this and go here and do that. But when their countries needed them, when their teams have needed them in the past, they've stood up and they've arisen and they've led the way, and the teams have been successful. And then you got the other side where it's not only that they've got the ability, but they're a lot more loud. They're a lot more gesture. They can tell you where to go. They'll tell you off when they need to. Gerrard, Keane, Vieira, if you want to throw it back to those times, technically gifted footballers, fantastic players, but also very loud, very maybe aggressive is the word to use. But more than anything, they show leadership. That's the key point of this speech, right? Bruno Fernandes has not performed consistently enough for Manchester United for the last 2.5 years. And this is an update to me saying last year that he's not performed for a year and a half. This is continuous. And he started and the culture at United within the fans is that it's a blame game thing. When Bruno Fernandes is not scoring anymore, who can we blame? Why are these guys not doing this? Rashford's form dropped off. Rashford, by the way, in his worst season in terms of performance, scored about 20 goals. The next year, he scored 4 or 5 league goals. I mean, in the overall season, maybe double digits. But because he was not as injured, he started to get a few more minutes. So it was bad, but not as bad, right? Man United signed Ronaldo, and because Bruno's goals dried up, it's the Ronaldo issue. Ronaldo slows the team down. Ronaldo does this and the other. Since Ronaldo has left, there's not one person that can tell me that Bruno Fernandes has fundamentally improved. He's more petulant. He's actually been given the license to be more of a, quite frankly, for lack of a better term, a dick, because what he showed yesterday on the pitch was Ten Hag used the perfect word. It was unprofessional. It was unprofessional. You are a player for your team, armband or not. You do not show the act of petulance and misbehavior that you showed on the football pitch. You don't do that. And as much as I will get onto all the other players, which I've done before, you are the captain, and it's what you guys have you've spoken about, leadership. Casemiro, what can you do, this, that, and the other? But the person that wears the armband is supposed to be the biggest leader. He's the one that's supposed to lead by example in all aspects. He didn't do any of that.
I'll mention this, coach. I'll mention a few players. My biggest issue with Bruno, going back to Bruno Fernandes, doesn't perform well enough in the big games because he's not technically assured. He's a good goal scorer, good at creating chances, but if you watch him, technically he's not great. Doesn't keep the ball well, doesn't execute his passes well, loses possession, which are the very things you don't need in a midfielder. You look at someone like Luka Modric, how he's able to continue at the age he is at that high level because he's technically assured. You give him the ball, he retains it well, passes the ball well, links up play well. Bruno doesn't do those, and in the big games, those are what you need. My biggest issue with Bruno is that that captaincy armband shouldn't be anywhere near him because he's a mo now. For me, your captain, shouldn't always be moaning and complaining at players or when things don't go well. They should be encouraging. They should be able to uplift players. Every time I see a clip of Bruno, he's always moaning about something. When things don't go well, he waves his arm up, he moans about something. And for me, that isn't good quality to have in a captain, but they let him off because, he scores goals. That isn't acceptable. You need a captain who has a balance. When it's time to admonish players, do so. When it's time to uplift players, do so. But it seems when things go wrong, he's one of the first individuals to be there screaming at everyone else. But when he does something wrong, all is forgiven. Another key thing I like to mention at Manchester United, so I mentioned two more things and leave it there. The fact that Manchester United still have Fred and McTominay there as midfield options tells you exactly the big problem at that club. Because every other club evolves from that. You look at Arsenal, they've got Partey and Ødegaard since that time. Obviously, Liverpool have tried to change, but injury-wise hasn't helped, which they've had to bring back the likes of Henderson. But Liverpool brought in Fabinho during that time. They brought in Thiago during that time. Harvey Elliott's coming through that time. You look at City's midfield, that's kind of evolving too with the players they bring in. Chelsea is a different kettle of fish, so I'm never going to discuss Chelsea. But the fact that, those two players have, we've moaned about those players for so many years, and they're still there. Fred started that game. McTominay came on as a substitute. Why are those two players still your options when they're technically not good midfielders? That tells you everything that needs to be said about Manchester United. And then lastly, I'll go on about Rashford, right? I'll say this. At the moment, the issue you're going to have with Rashford is that Rashford is a confidence player. So Rashford and all the goals he scored over the last how many weeks is all based on confidence. If you look at Rashford's overall game, it's not good. His decision-making, it's still not good. And I sit there and I say, well, sometimes when players aren't performing well in confidence, their technical ability and their football intelligence sometimes is what they can rely on. So sometimes you can look at players saying, he hasn't scored a goal, but he's kind of contributed in other ways. I look at Rashford in that game and I said, well, when the confidence wasn't there, I didn't look at him and thought, he was one that could kind of drag United, or he was one that can stand up and give you a performance. Because over the last few games, take away his goals, he's still making the wrong decisions. I don't think his overall football game has improved. I think what we've seen is a more consistent goal scorer. But I think there's still aspects of his game that he needs to work on. Otherwise, I can't see him consistently being up there as one of the top players season in, season out, which is why he dips in form where he has one season where he's good and then seasons where it's like, what's happened to Rashford? And then this is the season where he's good. Next season, he could go back to what's happened to Rashford when the confidence drops. And I think Ten Hag's done a good job what he's doing there. But ultimately, you need to clear house. I mean, you're still harboring Martial, still harboring Fred, still harboring McTominay, Maguire's still there. You're still like Shaw. I think Shaw's done well this season, but let's be brutally honest. He should have been replaced by now because he's such an inconsistent player. He can give you those games at a whim at any time of the season. He's not that consistent. And Dallow's back in the fold. For me, he's been in and out that squad for so many years. These players should have been replaced and shouldn't still be starting for your club. You should have been from them.
Well, I mean, again, I don't really the Dallo one. I mean, I can sum it all up in one, to be honest, the 2 points. But with Dallo, I mean, I didn't mind Dallo being part of the squad only because I thought he was going to be a bit part player. He actually found a decent run of form. I always use the word decent. Yeah. Because you have to go on before I call you, say good form and then top class form and the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Him and even the Rashford, I understand what you're saying about Rashford. It's not that I disagree. I think there's about 2 or 3 reasons for why his game has not improved from when he was maybe 21, and I think a lot of that has got to do with how the club was also functioned as well. And I'll get onto that now. The reason why you still got a Fred and McTominay there, the reason why Rashford will need a proper coach. I use that term very coach like Ten Hag to get the best out of him and utilize his key skills to the best of his ability. Is because United have not had a consistency for a long time. Whether your name is Van Gaal, whether your name is Mourinho, whether your name is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, there's always been a question mark over: are they going to be there next year? Are they going to be there next week? This is a terrible performance. Are they going to be here? Now you've got a manager that's come in where it actually looks like everything's going to be long term with Ten Hag. There's a bit more time. So, Steve told you last time you were here to believe in Arteta, right? Because he's starting to build something. You got to give it time, and time is the key factor here. We've grown up on time. You had the second longest reigning manager in Premier League history behind my manager, right? And what we understood from those guys is that they were given time to build things time and time again. Wenger eventually it started to falter off. Fergie went away on a high. The club, in terms of like the squad, didn't go away on his best eye because it wasn't the best squad anymore. But regardless, they had long tenures to build teams, right?
Yeah.
The reason why you're going to see a Fred and McTominay here, maybe even next season, is because to rebuild this team, you really need to take time. And a result like this epitomizes it, because we had lost before this game 1-25. So Gary Neville, Michael Richards, Troy Deeney, and whoever else I've heard this weekend talk about the game and describe it as a blip. You can call it a blip, but the last time we had a good run of fun and we called it a blip after one loss, the form didn't return. And that's because players reverted to type. They lost their confidence and reverted back to what they were showing beforehand. So if we're going to give managers time, Ten Hag's going to need time to slowly usher these guys out. Liverpool went through the same thing. It's not that, Klopp couldn't get the best out of some of these players. He, in his first season, got into the Europa League final. They did lose that final, but you could see there was something brewing. It's about taking the time and building something. Ten Hag in his first year has managed to get these guys a trophy. They're still in the hunt for 2 other cup trophies. I never believed in a title race, but in Europa League, they're in the FA Cup. So there's a chance to also add more silverware. So he's not doing a bad job. Yeah. But that's what you need to let him continue with and let him build his team and not let it be a 3-year project. It has to be a 4, 5, 6 year, 7, 8 year project where you can say to him, these guys have been here for a while. Are you convinced by them? No. Okay, so we're going to let you build your team. None of the whole Mourinho gets second place and he says, I need a centre-back, get me Tobo Alderweireld, that you get him league grant. None of that stuff. None of the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer saying, I need a striker. Ronaldo suddenly becomes available. And I truly believe that Ole wasn't really looking at Ronaldo. I think he wanted to wait a year, give Martial a season up top. I'm not a Martial fan, but if that's the plan, you got to let it run. You just have to let it run. You have to back your manager. I always say a manager, in my opinion, he's not given a fair run if you dictate who gets into his squad and who doesn't, unless he fundamentally agrees that you can do the signings, I'll do the coaching.
Like Graham Potter's the big example of that.
I kind of feel sorry for him because I don't think he's told Chelsea to sign all these players, and I don't think he knows what to do with all these players. To be completely honest with you, you're going to see a lot of rotation week in and week out. And people saying, "Oh, he's his team again." Of course he has, because he's going to have to. He
has to keep that squad happy. So
precisely, the only person that he doesn't have to really keep happy too tough is João Felix, because he's going back to Atletico at the end of the season. That's a short-term thing, but everyone else has come in on an 8-year, 9 contract. So you got to keep them happy some way. And this is going to be Ten Hag's problem, because he's now given silly contracts to players over the years. So now we're going to see how United do business this summer, because Phil Jones' contract is running out. The last time his contract was running out, and bear in mind, he hasn't played consistent football since 2015. His contract was running out, and they gave him a new one. Same thing happened with Chris Smalling, and then we even lost him. We took a loss. We signed him for 12 million, and we still took a loss, no matter how many years he spent at Man United. And he won pretty much everything you can win at a club apart from the Champions League. So he didn't have a bad time at United, but we still took a loss. This has been recurring, so on. Now, Steve made a very good point about Ten Hag. What I saw yesterday was worrying, because he didn't see the issue, and he didn't address it. And also his subs were worrying as well, because you said Fred came off for McTominay. I don't think that was the right substitution. I think he should have brought Sabitzer. A bit more know-how, a bit more stability, someone that will work better with Casemiro. Didn't do it. But I still have faith in the guy to improve the team, because he's showed the signs to get there. But the only way I know he's going to sink or swim is if he's backed properly. And, whether that's with new owners or not, who knows? But the point being, results like this, they're not freak results, because Man City beat Man United 6-3. They conceded 6. Brentford scored 4. Liverpool scored 7. Last season, Liverpool scored 9. It was 9-0 aggregate, wasn't it? 5 and then 4. 5 at Old Trafford, 4 at Anfield. Wow. And if you want to talk about Man United's heritage at Anfield in the last, I think, 10 appearances, the aggregate is 36-2. So when you're talking about rebuilding, When you talk about rebuilding, it's a big job. So whether United want to give him the time or not, whether the new owners,
Joe, can I just say,
go on.
I said everything's great in my world, and it couldn't get much better. That stat makes it much better, mate. So I appreciate you sharing that with me.
I saw that this morning, and I was like, oh my, you know what? I don't even have the words. I don't even have the words. But hey, Liverpool were thorough deserved winners. 7-0 on the night.
Yeah, as long as Liverpool just forget how to play when we come up to their neck of the woods, that's the only important thing to me.
Wait, well, I'm just gonna say this to you right now, Basil. Just hope that you better hope that you don't get a battering that we did, because it's not. It's not even about banter. It's just not a nice feeling, man.
Yeah,
so. What I would say, just to close from Liverpool's perspective, is what you've seen there is frontline 2.0. How it's growing, how it's developing. If we add superb quality to the midfield, we'll be in the shakedown for everything again very soon. If we add, I actually think at times next season Liverpool will play 4-2-3-1 with Gakpo behind Núñez, with Diaz and Salah left and right. With, if it's Bellingham, it's Bellingham, and every time we speak to a journalist, it seems to be they all think that's done, and one other. That could be quite some combination. So I think next season we're going to be a lot more attack minded. Why wouldn't you be with four forwards of that nature? And if you add Diogo Jota to that, question for you guys: tell me another team in European football that can boast 5 forwards in their squad of that standard.
None.
That's
all 5. None. None. That's it.
The thing is, see, as it goes back to your point, I think obviously Liverpool haven't had a good season this season. But that can always change with 1 or 2 players, because look at last season. The season before that, you guys scraped 4th, and then last season, no one gave you guys a chance. But then you went deep into all 4 competitions.
Yeah.
And I've always said this: I think Liverpool are just 1 or 2 midfielders away from once again challenging. The midfield is where Liverpool have been let down this season. I think if they sign 1 or 2 quality midfielders, and obviously Klopp gets the confidence of everyone back again, I think Liverpool will be back there again. I think people have gone a bit overboard, even the likes of Jamie Carragher saying, "Oh, this is the end of the era." I'm like, no. Teams go through ups and downs. I think this is Liverpool's down, but I think fundamentally they've got the players. There's just 1 or 2 missing, and they'll be back up there again, in my opinion.
If I can put my 2 pence in there, I don't think people have actually started to realize what's going on at Liverpool. And that's why I've been quiet all season. Because when I saw the end of the era thing, I've not laughed at Liverpool this season in terms of like, yes, I've enjoyed their losses, but I've not laughed at them in the sense of, I think they're done. Because if you look at their squad, they're slowly building. And sometimes people forget Trent is still very young.
Players have been injured. People forget of the injuries too. Like
exactly.
Martin, Van Dijk are probably their centre-back pairing that they want to go through for the next few years. Konate has been in and out of that squad through injury. So it's like, once they kind of resolve the fitness issue with players and they have that full squad back again, I would say teams should beware. I've never written off Liverpool. I've just seen them say, this is just a bad season. I think they'll be back.
Yeah,
one or 2 additions.
You got Trent. Trent's still very young. Trent is still very young. He's got so many years left in this game. Robertson has still got years left in the game. Tsimikas is a good backup. Van Dijk is still going to be at the top of his game because he defends very well, regardless of how his form has been. He's still a very top class defender. Konate, you've mentioned as well. Fabinho is still a very good defensive midfielder. Don't get it twisted. Form is something. Class is temporary. Form is temporary. Class is permanent. That's the term. Sorry. Harvey Elliott's a good player.
Still there if you can
Thiago. I mean, Thiago's older, but they replace him. And if they get Jude Bellingham, that's just a brilliant signing.
And we got the young lad who's going to save us 50 million quid. Yeah, he looks a real promising. I think from a Liverpool perspective, I think Kostas might leave in the summer. Purely because he wants to play football and he's not getting in front of Andy Robertson, and he's good enough to play first team football in 17 of the 20 teams in the Premier League. He will get in their team all day long. He would probably get in your team.
Probably.
I wasn't assuming it, but now you've given me that reaction. He will get in Manchester United.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the confidence to say that. It means a lot. But we're not in the worst place. Fabinho and Henderson and Thiago to some degree. If we buy 2 centre midfielders, will take squad roles because football's becoming about squads now rather than your 11 on your match day.
Yeah.
They're not bad people to call on for half an hour, a game when you can do horses for courses. We will buy 2 midfielders in the summer. We will probably get a centre back, and we're looking at Indica, the guy who's available on a free from Frankfurt. Which would be a great signing because we're going to probably lose Joel Matip in the summer. If we get a decent offer for him, I can see Liverpool accepting it. Nat Phillips will leave. Reiss Williams will go from the squad. Joe Gomez will probably have to be happy to be 3rd or 4th choice centre-back. As long as we've got 5 decent centre-backs in the squad, which we have at the moment. Self-belief. Football's a confidence thing. The margins are really, really very small. They're a lot smaller than I can cater for, and I've been involved at a reasonable standard of football, but nothing like that. It's purely a confidence thing, and this new frontline 2.0, shall we call it, with Gakpo is very Firmino-like in terms of how he looks after the ball. But he's a lot quicker than Firmino, and I'd probably say he's a better finisher than Firmino. Not so selfless, maybe not such a link player as Firmino is, but that will develop in time because he's been nurtured into a new role. And that's probably why Bobby's thought, actually, I can afford to leave because we've had a snapshot of what Liverpool's front line looks like, and I'm not in it. And that's fine. That's football evolution, and we love him and we'll thank him and we'll go ahead with what we've got. And I can't wait for pre-season when we bring some new bodies to the football club and we have a look at what the squad looks like going into next season. Because with those 5 guys up top and young Ben Doak knocking on the door for first team positions or first team squad time rather, it's looking more like 6 guys up front that you can rotate, which is never a bad place to be.
Absolutely. Right. I think we spent about almost 50 minutes on this game, so we'll move on. I'm conscious of time because there is a game coming on in about 15 minutes, so let's try and
fire through the rest. Let's do a quick straight through.
Yeah, let's fly through. Right, okay. Brighton absolutely hammered my locals West Ham 4-0. Quick one, David Moyes. How much? I keep asking this question every week because I don't know why he's still here. So see you later. But I will say this about Brighton very quickly. Brighton are currently 8th on 38 points. They have played 23 games. They have played the least amount of games in the league season alongside Brentford. Now, it's if but some maybes, but if they win their games in hand, they go above Tottenham on points.
Oh, okay.
So they might be in the top 4. I mean, long term, they're not better than Liverpool. So, I think if Liverpool find form in terms of consistent form, there is no competition there, and they're finding their way so far. But Brighton are having a fantastic season. Shout out to Serbi, and that might open some discussions about Graham Potter, but we'll leave that one for another time. So we'll leave that there. Tottenham, as we spoke of, lost 1-0 to Bournemouth. The customary one time a season Adama Traore banger went in.
Anthony, you ready? Conte, ready?
I'm ready.
See you later. See you later. And this is a case of you don't know what you missed until it's gone because apparently they're trying to bring back Pochettino.
What a bad idea that is.
Oh, Tottenham are just a mess. I saw an old interview of Pochettino where he was talking about after they won the Champions League and trying to build and they're not building, and he was talking about other teams buying players and building. And it's like he went there. It's like you need a washing machine, but then they buy you a dryer. You need a sofa, and they buy you small chairs. And that's literally the perfect way to describe Tottenham. That board is an absolute disgrace. Honestly, they have zero football ambition whatsoever, and it's criminal. And it's funny because Conte only took the job because of the money. Let's be brutal. I don't know what business he had going to Tottenham, because I've always said this: the thing with Tottenham, Conte, he's not a building manager. He's not a manager who is here's a group of players, work with them and try and build them. He wants tried, ready, and tested. It's a bit like Mourinho. He wants his way, and when he doesn't get his way, kind of throws his toys at the pram. And you always knew this was going to end badly for Tottenham, because obviously he's off now, but obviously even before then you can see the relationship breaking down. You can see he's not happy with these players, and you can see like he's going to leave at the end of the season without a shadow of a doubt. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, well, did the board not analyze what kind of manager they were getting? You can't try and cover things up by saying we've got a world-class manager and think he's going to work miracles. Fortunately, especially in England, it's far too competitive. So it's never, ever going to work like that. And obviously now we're seeing the capitulation of Tottenham. And the things that it's scary, because I really worry for Tottenham, because there's always a question of, will Harry Kane stay? And if Harry Kane leaves that club, they're in big, big trouble. Big, big trouble. Because he bails them out in so many games. And if he's out of that team, what's left? I think they go from like they challenge between 5th and 9th regularly in future seasons.
He will be a Man United player, but for next season.
I hope not.
I am praying. I am praying.
There are certain media outlets that will tell you that a deal was brokered for him to leave, and the only reason he stayed was because Tottenham got Champions League football. And that deal that was brokered, that was signed, sealed, if they didn't get it, was to Liverpool last summer. And then because he stayed, they went for Núñez.
You know what, man? A part of me is kind of glad that you didn't get him.
Yeah, of course.
Me too. I can't stand the bloke, mate. So I'm absolutely delighted we didn't get him.
Oh, I mean, it's working. Núñez is doing a great job for you guys, but I was kind of scared that you guys, because Liverpool are the club these days that, I would say these days, most of the time to be fair, where another club is linked with a player and then out of nowhere they say, yeah, man, so he's coming here. And you're gonna have to just gonna have to deal with it. Because for Gakpo, all you heard was Man United. And then one day I go on Twitter and all I see is Paul Joyce, who's ultra reliable, just say, yeah, Gakpo to Liverpool. And I was like, you know what, man? I just give up. I give up.
Even Núñez, they did that deal so quickly.
Yeah, and that's how you should do business. Yeah. That's how you should do business. Don't talk too much. Let's do it. The reason why we hear about Bellingham is because he's like the hottest prospect. That makes sense. But other than that, business is sealed. Talking of managers that bye-bye. Poch was bye-bye after he said that he needs to change the furniture in the team and they gave him Sissoko. Steve, what are we saying? Another 2-year run and then bye-bye, or what are we doing with Pochettino if he does come back? Because I don't know why he'd come back to this team, to be completely honest.
That would be a disaster for Spurs if he comes back, because it's very quickly results type. Yeah. They're not going to back him in the way that he would want to be backed. He's a fraud. He's an urban myth. Poch is a myth, mate. Do you know what? You know when you were looking for
I totally agree with you. But
when you were looking for a manager, I told you that stop looking at Pochettino, because he can't. He's another one that tactically is inept. 100%. Take the first leg of the Champions League against Manchester City when PSG took the lead, and then Manchester City took control of the first half. And the second half, he came out and adopted exactly the same tactics. And he stood there on the touchline looking confused and puzzled as Manchester City won the tie on the night. Mauricio Pochettino stumbled across a balance at Tottenham that kind of worked. It was out of luck, not out of skill. The man is a fraud, and if he goes to Spurs, he'll be gone within 12 months. And if he went to Man United, he'd be gone within 12 months.
The thing is, I totally agree with Steve. Like, but not the reason why I respect this is because not many people come out and say everyone's always like being around the bush. I've said it from time. He is a fraud, and he's been lucky to get the job there because he was at Tottenham. But then you saw how inept he was at Tottenham in those key moments where he had to make key decisions. Useless, tactically useless, and obviously he always played the same side. But it's like, okay, when it's time to change or make the right kind of substitutions or tactical changes, always found wanting. I always go back to when he was at Tottenham and he had so many semi-finals and faltered in a lot of those semi-finals. And it's like, you can go back and look at his tactical know-how and you'll see fault in why he lost those games. Then he went to PSG and he got found out there at PSG, tactically inept. And I've said that the reason why he doesn't have a job now is because he wants a big job, but no big team is going to give him the opportunity because he doesn't have the minerals to manage a big club. For me, he's one of those ones he's good to manage like a mid or maybe a challenging club and allow him to do what he wants. But sometimes you need just that little bit extra to manage at the big clubs. And yeah, Poch doesn't have it. I mean, people are linking into Manchester United. Manchester United dodged a bullet. I would have been happy he went to Manchester United But you guys dodged the bullet, not going for him.
Damn, I kind of like him, but damn, he got called a. You know what?
Nah,
Hey,
he's
man,
a fraud, man.
he can hold that. He's unemployed right now, so he can hold that. Chelsea won 1-0. They finally scored a goal, finally got a W, and they went from 10th to 10th. But where's he Fofana? That's come back. He's had a long-term injury. He's come back. He's looking good, looking healthy, looking fit. Scored the winner. So kudos to him. That's the only praise I think we give Chelsea. Other than that, Graham Potter, I can't lie to you. Soon enough. See you later, man.
Yeah, do you know what? And funny thing, I actually was for the Graham Potter appointment. I liked him at Brighton, but my eyes have been open, especially as you mentioned De Zerbi. I think he's doing good. I've always said Potter was doing well with that Brighton squad, but it was very imbalanced in terms of defensively, they weren't great. I mean, they were great on the eye attacking wise, but then when you look at where he finished with Brighton, the positions where they finished in the league wasn't that great. And you can always go back to how they set up, how he was very imbalanced. But you look at what De Zerbi is doing, they've got good balance defensively and offensively. And then you look at what Potter's also doing at Chelsea. As you said, you kind of, you come at him with, you put your glasses on with Potter and you start to say, was he really what I thought he was at Brighton?
All he's done is, in leaving Brighton, he's packed something in his case that they probably didn't want him to take, but they're quite glad that he took it and transferred it to Chelsea. And that's an inability to score goals. Graham Potter sides do not score goals. Yeah. He's transferred that from Brighton to Chelsea. They've got 33 seasoned first-team professionals. They can only register 25, and all 33 of them expect to play first-team football. That is probably more difficult now than it ever was under Roman Abramovich. He's not signing the players. Todd Bowley is signing the players.
Yeah.
Steve, don't forget the players that are on loan too. Because I was speaking to my friend. I said, you forget they still have Lukaku on the books. They still have Callum Hudson-Odoi on the books. There's a few other players who are out there on loan where they still have on their books. So it's more problematic than the player. And Kuku's coming in. In the summer. So it becomes more problematic once the season ends than what we're currently seeing.
But they're all on ridiculous money. Nobody wants them. Callum Hudson-Odoi on about 150 grand a week.
Yeah,
not worth a third of that for me.
He's on 150k a week, and he has as much of a future at Chelsea as me. We'll go to Man City. They beat Newcastle 2-0. Good game. Two decent, good sides. I don't think there's much to really say around here.
Newcastle don't deserve top four after this result.
Newcastle's bubbles burst. A month ago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They'll finish 6th or 7th. They'll get European football, and they've been to a League Cup final, which puts Eddie Howe ahead of the curve in terms of where they need to be. The next 12 months is massive for him because they're going to need to start recruiting players who are going to want to play for certain managers. If your phone goes and it says Eddie Howe and you'll say Paulo Dybala, you're not picking the phone up, are you? That is a Brendan Rodgers situation right there when he got Steven Gerrard to ring Willian and say, "Would you play for Liverpool?" And Willian went to Chelsea. So that's true. That conversation did happen. Eddie, there's levels to this, and Eddie Howe's competency level will leave world-class players questioning whether they should sign for Newcastle. At some point, they've got to take the plunge and go and get a world-class manager like Poch.
Yeah, I think. I think. Do you know? It would not surprise me if that is the next move. But no, I think
that was good.
I think they're in danger of not finishing in the European positions. Because when you look at Newcastle, at the start of the season, they had so many draws. Newcastle actually don't score that many goals when you look at it. And now they're struggling. As I said, the bubbles burst. Now they're struggling. Sometimes when you struggle, if you're scoring goals, the goals can get you out of trouble. Now they're struggling, and defensively, they're not as solid. The goals can't save them now.
Yeah. And it's not a criticism. It's not a criticism. They are
no.
From what they were to what they are now, they're worlds apart.
100%, yeah.
They've signed some shrewd players. Guimaraes is an absolutely quality player.
Absolutely.
Real Madrid are batting their eyelids at him. So that's not a long shelf life at Newcastle for him. He needs Champions League football. He's too good not to play in that environment. The next 12 months for that Newcastle project are massive, and I think at the end of the 12 months, there's a question mark, not because he's done anything wrong, as to whether Eddie Howe's your man to take them on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's got 10 to the next
I
level.
think
I
he's
agree
probably
with
got
that.
one more season. I think he's probably got 1 or 2 more seasons because, like I said, he's just a springboard to stabilize things, get them at a position where it's like, okay, we're now like a solid, maybe top 8 team, and then they move on to the next one and say, okay, now it's time for us to be a bit more ambitious because he's creating that stability there.
I think for him, that's not a bad thing, though. I'll say that quickly before we move on to the other games, just because I think, just for his sake anyway, for someone who started really well in the Premier League with Bournemouth and he eventually faltered away, he went back, sort of worked on his game a little bit, became a more better defensively as a coach. We've seen that with Newcastle this year. So I think it's a good for his reputation as well. Even if he gets fired, they'll look at it and say, yeah, you know what, you did a good job there. You helped them build themselves and what's next for you. So, hey, who knows? But not much to say about City. They're just trying to keep it with Arsenal right now. They won 2-0. Good on them.
City are such a boring team. I know how you feel, Steve, man. They just never die.
They're very annoying. Very annoying. And we'll just sum up these games quickly. Now, they are important in terms of the relegation battle. At some point, we will get onto that. But
Palace are getting dragged in. They've not won in 2023. They're getting dragged in. Villa are safe.
Leicester.
Brendan Rodgers getting dragged in as well. Southampton, 1 week are great. Next week, they've never played football. Really weird. Everton, please. And those two surprised London sides, Brentford and Fulham, have been a real breath of fresh air. Brentford's world without Tony, who's admitted liability for about 200 of those cases. He will be allowed to play football on his 78th birthday with the ban he's getting for that.
You know what? I think that's the perfect way to end it right there. There's not much to add to that. All right, thank you guys for watching, listening. I saw some new subscribers as well and dropping all the likes. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. I'm sure you'll be back again when Man United get spanked again. I know why you're here. But I want to thank my guests as always, of course. So, of course, before we let everyone go, we let them plug themselves. Basil, please let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, as you can see, it's a very different Basil from last season and seasons and prior. You can find me at bjacobs14. There's a lot more football tweets than you've probably seen in the last 2-3 years. A lot more positive Arsenal tweets than you've seen in the last 2-3 years. So you can find me there, and you'll find a much happier Basil who can now happily tease other clubs in their failure and obviously rejoice at what Arsenal's doing this season.
This is making me sick, but I'm gonna smile anyway. No, much love to Basil, man. Always. Steve, please.
I've had a ball tonight, guys. Really cool. Thank you for having me on again. Always a pleasure. Not just because the subject matter was a 7-0 drubbing for Man United. 7-0, yeah, 7. No, it's always cool to come on and have a chat. Keeping it real, Kojo, must be difficult to sort of be positive or happy in your role tonight as the host. But you've done a great job, mate. And I do enjoy talking football with you lads, both of you. So really good to be on, and we've had a bit of a laugh as well, haven't we? So it's been a good hour and 28 minutes of our time. So thanks again for having me on, and you can get me on my socials there, Steve Plunk, or if you're a Liverpool fan and you've caught this, first of all, subscribe, because this is a top channel with some great lads who come on here, and it's proper football chat. There's no sensationalism or bollocks. It's all good stuff. And then if you want to see a bit more stuff, paid or unpaid, come and have a look at what we do at the Red Men TV. Got some good stuff coming out at the moment. I've been there 6 months now. I'm really enjoying being in football media as a job, permanent job. It's full time. It's really cool.
Awesome. Thank you for the plug as well. I appreciate that. And yes, I will say check out the Redmen as well, because of Steve, that's the reason why I checked it out, and that says a lot, because I'm sitting at home sometimes checking like local content. So yeah, trust me when I say it's good, because it's hard for me to watch that, but at the same time, yeah, man, they're doing their thing. 3inMidfield, like, comment, subscribe, of course. 3inMidfield podcast on YouTube. If you're here, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, 3inMidfield. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Other than that, have a great week, have a great night, and if you're a Man United fan like me, don't cry too much. It's gonna. Hey, it could be worse. You could be Pochettino. Good night.
Bye.